Right, welcome back. Hopefully you enjoyed the last video. This one's going to try and build on those same concepts we were thinking about last time, like the sort of stages and progressions you go through when you're writing someone's training. And I thought how I'd do it today is kind of like answer a few of the questions I got asked off the back of the last video and kind of go through my thought process and actually try and write up like a schematic for how I'd plan someone's year. There's a huge caveat to this that hopefully I'll say throughout the video, but if I don't hear it, it's recorded on tape. All periodization and planning is always reliant on like what's kind of happening and going on. You cannot write, or it's unwise to write like an entire year's worth of programming because progress is not linear, and like as physiological organisms we don't adapt in like a linear manner, like if this then that, then this then that. Like when I first started programming, like that was like music to my ears. That's how I used to write programs, like do this, then add this, and like add one rep here. And like that is how a lot of my methods work, but at the same time it's done within constraints where I'm like, I'm going to write 4 progressions, this might take you 6 to 8 weeks, so we know where we're trying to get to, but I also understand that you may jump ahead 3 or 4 stages in 1 week and then not progress for 8 weeks. So we need to have this kind of thing where we're constantly reviewing our training and being like, actually like this is the bit that needs to be improved, or this is the limiter we need to focus on, rather than just being like, yep, by week 12 you'll be doing this, because that, to be honest, is complete and utter bullshit. So the main question I got asked off the back of the last video is like, well, how do you know what are the bits that you need to sort out early on? Like, how do you know when you move to this bit, etc.? So I guess I'd go through, or what I'm going to try and go through now, is just like my process when I first work with a new client. So the thing that you'll often hear in strength and conditioning for any sport is this idea of a needs analysis. So you look at what the top of the sport have physically, and then you kind of work back in your model as like, well, then that's an area that needs to be improved, or this is an area that needs to be improved. Tough in CrossFit because it's so multifaceted, but actually kind of easier in CrossFit because it's all fairly measurable. In other sports, like I work in like rugby, you're like, oh, so what's his tactical understanding like? Now you can't, or some people do say, oh, it's a 9 out of 10, but that 9 out of 10 is kind of like a rubbish bullshit number, like that means diddly squat, whereas at least in CrossFit you can be like, he can snatch 125, the best guy in the world can snatch 140. So you've got an exact benchmark in black and white as to where someone stands. But this does lead to an interesting problem in this instance, and that is called what I term the Matt Fraser problem, and that is for 99.9% of the population, comparing yourself to the best guy in CrossFit, Matt Fraser, is probably a fruitless task, because you're probably so far down on everything that you can't actually differentiate on what you're relatively worse at. Now there might be some exceptions to that, so if you come from a good Olympic lifting background, you might say, well actually, you know what, my lifts are 90% of his, but I can't do a single bar muscle up. So therefore, like that kind of helps, but I actually think you're better off using your peers and like an open that you've recently done, so like either this one coming up or last year's open, and it should give you an idea of like, comparative to the level where you want to be, what are those shortfalls that you have. So obviously in the open, like the app gives you like your percentile rank, so if you're like 96th percentile in most of them, but you've got a couple that are in the 80s or 70s, and then you look at the components of those workouts, you've probably then got an idea of where you need to go with your training. The other thing that you need to look at first and foremost is like, what will kill you? So I've nicked this, I think it's from Chris Hadfield, the astronaut, who says that like in NASA, the thing you're most worried about in space is the next thing that's going to kill you, or what could kill you. So in this instance, in the CrossFit world, it's not as dramatic as killing you, but it's, I can't double under. So if you can't do a single double under, if all you improve in the 12 months before the next open is that you can double under, or handstand walk, or whatever it is, that's going to move you forward massively, and that needs to be a priority. Now that might be something that stays with you for 12 months, like for whatever reason. Like I'm not saying that you just stand there every day and try and do a double under, but for whatever reason you need to figure out what is your limiter that doesn't allow you to do that thing. Now double unders is generally a matter of practice. Hands down walking, look, this could be as simple as you're overweight, you need to lose weight, and that will make it easier to handstand walk. It could be as simple as practicing it and accepting that you're going to fall over a lot before you actually get handstand walking. It might be that you're not strong enough overhead, so actual general upper body pressing strength, the ability to hold a handstand against the wall, is actually something that will be really important in terms of moving that forward. And that's probably the next level on beyond, I can't do this, this is the thing I'm shit at, to why am I shit at it and how can I move that forward. So that's the first thing that we're going to prioritise in our training. Then it's a matter of thinking of what am I comparatively weak at. Now, weak is obviously a relative term, so that's weak compared to your peers, but also weak compared to yourself. So you might look at it and be like, I can squat 180 kilos, but I only snatch like 70. Well, that means that you're technically deficient in an Olympic lift. And again, like if you can, which is rare, but if you can squat a lot but you can't press a lot, or you can't snatch, grip, push, press a lot, then that probably makes it indicative of the fact that you're not strong enough overhead to capture snatch. But more often than not, it'll be just a technical element. Someone who can squat that much can probably press quite a lot as well. But that's where you need to start using your numbers. So how I generally look at it is, I'll be asking for people's back squats, front squats, strict press, push presses, clean and jerks separately. So like quite often you see quite a lot of people who need to work more on their jerk, or some instances that are rare, they might be really good at jerking, but actually their clean sucks, and that gives you a bit of a direction as to where you need to go in terms of what underpins it. The Olympic lifts to sort of squat ratios, there's no hard and fast numbers, but like I said, if you've got a guy who can back squat 180 but is only snatching 80, you know his lower limbs can generate a hell of a lot of force that is not translating into the snatch. Then you need to watch his snatch and see like, oh, is it a mobility issue? Is it like a positional strength issue? Like he's just not strong enough in that deep overhead position when his arms are fully extended at the bottom of the snatch? Is it that he's not strong enough overhead? Or is it purely just a technical deficiency where this guy has only just started Olympic lifting? So that gives you some direction of where you're going to go in your training. The next bit then becomes like what like guys are training think tank, they refer to like as what your limiters are. It's not a concept that's exclusive to him, it's one that's sat around in sports science for decades. You're essentially looking at like, are there things that physically that I don't possess that stop me being able to do X, Y, or Z? So like an easy one is like upper body pulling strength and those upper body gymnastics that require a high level of upper body pulling strength. Like if you're not, if you're struggling to get like a strict pull up or even like a couple of like 5, 10 kipping pull ups, like getting the ring muscle up is going to be tough, because if you can't even get your chin over a bar in a kipping pull up, you're really going to struggle to get your entire body mass over a set of rings or a bar in a bar muscle up. So those kind of like strict gymnastics to kip gymnastics, unbroken sets ratios will give us a good idea of where your gymnastics needs to go. And the last bit's really like what needs to stay the same. So because the way we're going to plan our training, we are going to kind of like touch on everything all throughout the year, because it makes no sense to like just build up like your rowing capacity in the summer and then never touch it again for the open, because those physiological things may depreciate over time. But what's the minimum amount of work you can do on something that you're good at to stay as good at as you are? That's awful English. But my instance here is like, so if you've got a guy who's really good at squatting, the thing that I'd want to know is like, well, could this guy only squat once every 2 weeks and stay as strong as he is and his Olympic lifts move up? Because if that's the case, then he doesn't need to get any stronger at squatting, because it's very rare in a CrossFit competition they ask you to do a back squat. Like it's a really important movement, underpins a lot of movements, and I can hear some people losing their minds that I just said that back squat wasn't that important. But the more important thing in CrossFit is probably how much you can snatch. And probably even more important than what you can do for a one-arm snatch is how often you can repeat like 90-95% of your max whilst gassed to fuck by like box jumps and skipping. So these things we're going to try and fill in like a fictional world. So what we're going to say is this person cannot handstand walk. This person has strong, good in the squat, good in the deadlift, good at strict pressing, good at bench pressing, good at strict pull-ups, strict chest to bar, not great at Olympic lifting, not good at kipping gymnastics. In terms of limiters, we're going to leave that bit blank, but what we're going to say for the moment here is that they are good they're good at opening, they've got a good 30-minute, 22 strokes per minute score. And then this probably feeds into the fact that actually what needs to stay the same here is their underlying strength and their underlying aerobic ability. I'm probably now out of shot, there we go. Their underlying strength and underlying aerobic ability. So we know what they're weak at. We're now going to fit it into our framework. So we've got to sort out hands down walks. That might stay there the entire 12 months. It might take them a whole year to get good at it. In which case, it may never develop out of the stage where they're just spending 15 minutes to half an hour a day practicing it. Like, it may never go into a Metcon. Because if it comes up next year in the Open, you're better off having the ability to do a hands down walk rather than being like, well, I can't really do one, or I can only do 1 meter, but I'm now going to stick it into a work. Because when you put it in a conditioning workout, it no longer becomes about the hands down walk, and therefore you're not actually practicing getting better at hands down walking. You're just getting so gassed that you can't practice the hands down walk. So then when the Open rolls around, like, yeah, you might not like ever done it when you're out of breath, but you probably stand a better chance with that skill being better on as a whole than you do being good at doing it gassed for a meter or two. Now that's it's on a scale, but that's where we're going to be working at. The underlying things that are limiters. We've said that like strength really isn't a limiter. So for us, in a lot of people's models, when they go away and work on like squat strength, snatch, all that kind of stuff, we're going to go out on that one. But what we are going to try and work on is our Olympic lifting. We are going to do some aerobic work because it's the kind of thing that's an easy gain at a relatively low cost. We're not going to do intervals that absolutely hammer the crap out of this athlete. We're going to do intervals that basically help us build a big base, gets us more physiological adaptations that build an aerobic capacity that underpins everything else that we do. So that's probably going to manifest itself in sort of rowing intervals that are based off of their 30-minute, 22 stroke per minute score. We're going to train these qualities independently to begin with, and that means that we are going to do sections that solely focus on Olympic lifting as though we're Olympic lifters. The reason for this is like, that's how you're going to move that ahead. Like doing Olympic lifting under fatigue when it's a real big work on isn't going to allow you to focus all your attention on actually Olympic lifting. That definitely 100% is CrossFit, and that's when we start to blend stuff together down in the get your shit together phase. But early on, we're just going to make you a better Olympic lifter. Likewise with the gymnastics, we're just going to make you better at gymnastics. So we said with this person that hands down walks are a massive work on. So we're going to slot that in twice a week early on. So this is like a week or two after the Open, you've gone away, you chilled out, you've done like hero wads and all that kind of shit. And you're coming back to your training. We're going to stick on those 2 days, you'll see why in a second. The other priority we said really is Olympic lifting, so we want to try and practice that as much as we can. Now, some people, like some Olympic lifters, they'll practice every single day, but that's because they don't have anything else to worry about, and they've also probably come through a system that's got them acclimatized to doing Olympic lifting every day. We are going to say that you've probably got 2 good days where you can probably hammer that quality, and then the day after that you need to recover. So for that reason, we're going to Olympic lift Monday after a day off on Sunday, and Friday. We also want to try and get in a third opportunity to practice, and that's probably best done on the Wednesday. Now, the next bit is completely conditional. So for myself, like I've had a hip and back issue for as long as I've been like athletically active, like early in my teens it manifested. So therefore, like on that Wednesday, I will probably do powers. Like I won't drop into deep hip flexion. That's different for different people, but because of that, it probably means that both of these days, I'm always going to go to maximise my practice time. I'm going to clean and I'm going to snatch. I'm going to clean and jerk and I'm going to snatch. And the powers here will be cleans and snatches. I won't jerk here because I'm going to go overhead here next. I said strict strength was pretty decent with this person, but I probably will still include some kind of like barbell stimulus early on, or maybe even dumbbell for unilateral work. So we'll have some dumbbell strict press, we'll have barbell strict press. That might progress to push presses. And then on top of that, we'll then also look at the gymnastics work. So then we'll put in some handstand push-ups. Now that is obviously your upper body getting handled from a pressing perspective. So we'll still have some like shoulder saber work in here, so stuff that's external rotation, all that kind of stuff. On these days here, because I've kind of said that to this person, like, squatting's not a massive issue, I'm going to find some kind of protocol that allows their lower body strength to progress or at least maintain throughout this period. That probably is still going to involve back squatting, etc., but not to the detriment that it takes away from the Olympic lifting. And I might even use like unilateral work. So I might squat twice a week. One of these might be unilateral, like a box step up, a split squat, whatever else. Just have a look at what the imbalances are. I may then also incorporate pulls on the Wednesday after the powers, or I might stick Olympic lifting pulls on the Monday or Friday. The volume of what goes into this, the intensity of what they do is largely governed by how they respond. So I'm not going to hammer the crap out of them if it turns out that doing this actually doesn't work. So I might end up doing like just cleans and squats on a Monday. I might end up doing just snatching and like step ups on a Friday. And the Wednesday powers might be severely limited in terms of sets and reps, but just enough to get them better at the ability to pull the bar into a good position and actually utilising their lower legs, etc. All the kind of technical things you'd want to work on, utilising the powers. From this bit, so that's basically most of your barbell work looked after. I'm probably also going to worry about, whilst their strict gymnastic work was good, I'm still going to throw in like stuff like strict chest to bar and bent over rows, because I think that's a quality, like I said, like if you don't do it at all, that will diminish over time. So I'm not necessarily looking like this to push on by everything else, but at least I know that that will help maintain muscle mass and the strength in those movements that underpins other movements. The next bit that I'm then going to throw in is like the gymnastic stuff that's then key. So that's like our ring muscle ups. So I'm classing this as a pull because he's quite strong at pressing. Yeah, there's a dip here, but it shouldn't. If the volume of dips out of a ring muscle up negatively affects this, I'll then look at where that's placed in the week. This is then the chest to bar. This is then bar muscle up. So it is pull, push, pull, day off, pull. And then toes to bar is a pull again, so there are two pulls there back to back, but this is a lower amplitude, like you're only pulling a little bit versus a lot in other movements. In terms of what these look like, if their movement's really poor, it might just be 15, 20 minutes of practicing, playing around with the movements, and only judging their progress in a qualitative manner, i.e. does the movement look better. It might, however, move on to be something like on the minute work, where you take like a sub-max percentage of a maximum unbroken. So like they can do 5 unbroken, so therefore we're going to look at doing 1 to 2 reps every minute on the minute, just to build up the capacity in that skill. That low percentage needs to be low enough that it allows the person to practice the drill with like bang on technique, and it looks better and better week on week. If you're adding reps at this stage and technique is looking worse and worse, you're now just ingraining bad movement patterns, and you need to go away and look at like, why is this movement pattern getting worse? Is it something that underpins it? Like, is it that actually they can't get their hips high enough or their centre of mass high enough to make it easy enough to get over the rings? So therefore actually be better off going away and working on like ring swings or hips to rings rather than working on the actual movement. You're going to swing back and forth in this phase between doing the full movement, like a full ring muscle up, in an EMOM format. I mean, you might shift back or simultaneously also work on like ring muscle up accessory work, whether that's drills that focus on the transition, drills that focus on the kip swing, drills that focus on your ring swing in terms of how your hips elevate towards the rings and or bar. So that might mean that you end up doing extra stuff here that is like gymnastics accessory skill stuff. All of this depends on how someone's responding and the volume they can then tolerate. We'll probably slot the rowing somewhere, so you might slot the rowing on a Saturday, or you could slot it on a Wednesday. Again, depends on time and how it all fits in for everyone else. Chest to bar and bar muscle up, toes to bar, they have the same mindset as the ring muscle up. So looking at it from the skill perspective, are there things we can work on that improves the skill? Can we use the EMOM formats to build volume like of high quality technical reps? So that's kind of playing and the E1 format moving on from there. As it progresses, like we don't want to go too far away from CrossFit, so we might start doing sort of like alternating E1 work. So like on the odd minutes, you'll do the gymnastic movement. On the even minutes, you'll then start doing things that make it harder to breathe. So you might start off with like monostructural stuff like the air bike, the skier, the rower, or you might use stuff like wall balls, box jumps, etc. that might not actually interfere with the movement in terms of being the same musculature, but they allow the body to get used to breathing hard and doing these movements. But at that point in time, we kind of just focus on like elevated breathing, and not to the extent that it becomes an impossible workout. We still want high quality gymnastic reps. So that's the kind of getting your shit together phase. How that starts to progress is like, this is the, pardon me, get your shit together phase. So still, is there anything that is still going to kill you? Like, have you mastered handstand walking? Have you got better at the stuff that was really your limit as before? So these things might still be in there, but they may have progressed to being in a workout, or they might now slot into a similar format of what we just discussed, where it's E1 works like odd minutes you go and do 10 meters handstand walk, even minute you go and row 12 calories. The Olympic lifting then starts looking at like time frame specific stuff. So we would always put in rest periods, etc., or do this every 2 minutes, every whatever minutes. But this time frame specific stuff starts looking at like, right, can I do a high percentage of my maxes that I've started to develop and push on with like increasing density, i.e. like moving those rest periods down so I can now do like a max lift at 90% every 30 seconds, whereas I started at 90 seconds. The key thing about this bit is it doesn't start until you've really managed to maximize your max Olympic lift. So if you're in this phase, you're like, oh, things are just getting going with this. The time thing may not happen till you're later in this stage, but at some point you know you have to work towards the idea at getting better at repeating near your max for the Olympic lifts. With the gymnastic stuff, this is where you start moving towards sort of 5-minute AMRAP percentages. I've seen that done on JST, works very well. Or you might work at percentages of your unbroken. And this is where I start calling like capacity intervals. So it's very similar, like we see this all the time. So you'll be like X amount of the gymnastic movement, a then non-competing movement, and potentially like, I'll call it cardio, or you want to call it monostructural. And then there's either rest, like rest 2 minutes, or it's built in a format where you're saying like every 5, do this for 6 rounds. The idea being is that you always do the gymnastic movement here fresh after the rest, so therefore you're still going to get a good percentage of good technical work in that you've been working on up here, and now you're trying to repeat it in more things that look like CrossFit, but it's not quite CrossFit because we're building in this rest. These rounds need to be manageable and repeatable. If you're setting your reps too high here, or you're making this bit too big and it's becoming a detriment to your gymnastic skill, you're missing the point. This is about repeatable maxes. So what decides like which one we do is probably at what point we are in this get this shit together phase. The isolation stuff, like the percentages of maxes, like we're going to do 6 locks of 20% of your max unbroken, and you're going to go and do a recovery bike in between. That will probably be in the earlier stages. You transition out of sorting your shit out into getting your shit together. As you start transitioning down into competing, you're going to start making things look like competition workouts, but with a bit of rest and the volume being sub-max enough that you can repeat it. The cardio stuff that you've developed early on, like maybe you've used the assault bike intervals, rowing intervals early in the sorting your shit out phase to maintain or to develop certain capacities, they will start to come in here, but you might also still keep them separate just to allow yourself to structure the training to have higher days, lower days, etc., rather than making every day like an absolute shit show in terms of just too much volume, too much intensity. The development of all these things, like I said, like ultimately you are going to work back in a timeline from a competition, but you need to remember that these things shouldn't always just be like, well, that's 12 weeks over, and now I'm done with max strength. Like, you've got to look at it and be like, how long can I develop this until I then need to start speeding it up and start to put it under some duress in terms of the competition stage. Competition stages then can be quite challenging to a lot of people to write, because you kind of need to start blending in everything together, and it's quite commonly where I see people just overloading themselves with just doing too much. So the model that I start to look at or follow, or have in my head, is that I'm going to make this, so a day, in this instance Friday, my competition day. So I'm going to try and put in some kind of like max out Olympic lift like you get at a competition that might precede or follow on from a Metcon. And I'm also then going to start putting in Metcons that replicate the competition I'm working towards. So if it's the Open, these will be Open redos. If it was a competition where I know the kind of format of stuff that's coming up, that will also go in there. If it's someone working towards a multi-day event, it might be that actually Friday and Saturday, or 2 days back to back, start looking like a competition. The other things that I'm then also going to do in this format is like early on a rest day, so like Monday's a really good example of this. I'm going to make sure I put in things that require freshness to develop or be maintained. So this is a strength day, so I may get them to squat, I may get them to press, I may get them to do some technical gymnastic work that they're not great at. So in this instance, the handstand walk might move to the Monday. So this day, its main stimulus is like skill and strength preservation and development. So like that allows me to get stuff in that I don't want happening under fatigue. So I want to make sure it's bang on, it's perfect. The Tuesday then just becomes aerobic in nature. So this gives me a chance to have a lower day in terms of intensity, but a day where you might be doing long intervals that helps with recovery, in as much that it's not constantly, it's not another day that's chipping away at huge reserves, but also again, like it enables you to develop aerobic capacities at a relatively low cost. The Wednesday day then for me is where we redevelop on these gymnastic ideas into threshold work. So I did one recently where it was like 21, 15, 9, chest to bar and deadlift, rest 5 minutes, then 9, 15, 21 toes to bar box jump, rest 5 minutes, and then 21, 15, 9 ski erg and pull up. So that's like a lot of upper body pulling, really getting a hammered in one day, but interspersed in Metcons that forced me to start doing it in competition-like settings. But because of the format of the 3 workouts back to back with the rest, it then kind of like limits the volume in a way that I want it to be limited. You still want someone to go hard, but consciously or subconsciously you're going to limit yourself because you know you've got a good 30, 40 minutes of work there. So what it basically means is your body has to get used to functioning at those thresholds. So the adaptations you start to get is those that makes your body better at shifting blood around, shifting the emphasis around, shifting lactate around to actually maximize the energy you can get out of your body. And therefore, the way that the week starts to look is that you basically go heavy strength stimulus, aerobic stimulus, a threshold stimulus, so really starting to push on into competition-like exercises. Day off, then an actual competition-focused day, so a day that is a bunch of competition WODs that you may spread out a little bit more. And then Saturday for me is like your fix-up day, so your day when you're going to maybe put in more aerobic work that will help with, to some extent, with the recovery, but also stuff that keeps you in one piece, because these blocks can be like 6, 12 weeks long in terms of preparing for a competition. The issues you sometimes get is that because everything becomes so dialed in towards the competition, you stop doing the things that keep you together. So like external shoulder rotation work, trunk work, movement work. Like CrossFit is very sagittally dominated. Everything is forwards and backwards. So you want to put in rotational work into the rest of your training. So throughout all of this, individuals will have work-ons. Like some people will never need to do any shoulder external rotation work. They're few and far between, but they just manage to keep and maintain a balanced shoulder because of the way they move and because of athletic backgrounds, etc. But other people might need it the whole way through this program. And those bits are then tailored and tinkered with to the individual, much like the warm-ups and stuff. But that's generally how I'll move through a year. Like I realise that's all a bit of a mess, but hopefully it gives you an idea of how things need to start to be blended and moved and progressed throughout the year. Next time we chat, I'm going to go through some energy system stuff, go through a couple of misconceptions about it, and how actually like that starts to develop. So that will be integrated with these ideas about gymnastic capacity intervals and how we integrate Olympic lifting and what energy systems you're actually working, and also assessing what energy systems potentially aren't that great for you. But that's all for today. Hope it was helpful. Any questions, let me know. Cheers.